Hey gang, it's Mike from PowerBI.Tips. I want to work through a simple little demo for you. This demo is, I'm going to call it, the filled donut chart. So this is how the visual works. We have a label and some items here on the page. It's a donut chart, and there's actually a gray area in the background that is a fill that is going to adjust on the chart. If I select different buttons here, you can see that the ring around the circle adjusts, as well as the fill inside the middle of the circle. The goal here is, as you adjust data values and as the numbers increase, not only does the ring complete itself, but the inside also fills itself as well. I really don't like using donut charts, but in this case where I'm kind of showing just two metrics or parts of a whole, it seems to make a lot of sense, and I really like the idea of combining the ring aspect as well as the fill ratio in the middle of the circle. All right, let's show you how to build this. We're going to start off with some visuals here. Let's begin with a bar chart initially. Now I've also made some calculations here. The ones that are important to note is that I have a score and the inverse of the score. So in this case, I'm working with data between 0 and 1, so it's very predictable. It's like a percentage. So in this case, I'm going to grab the score portion, or the portion that I want the larger portion of the ring, maybe like a percent complete or along those lines. We'll move that over here to the values area. The chart instantly draws a bar for me. Now I don't need any of the properties here, so we're going to heavily customize this visual. Click on the paint roller, and then we will remove the y-axis. We're not going to need that. We're going to open up the x-axis and adjust some properties here. So we want to make this bar as large as possible. So we want to make it as max size, and we want to have the largest width here. So this gets the bar as large as we can possibly make it. Now we can turn off the x-axis. And then we will also turn off the title, and we technically don't need tooltips or the visual headers as well. Now I can size this by grabbing the corner now. So now I can grab this, and I want it to be as close to a square as I possibly can make it. That looks about right. Maybe just a bit smaller here. Okay, that seems about right. So we now have a square area. So the next thing we want to do is we want to grab another visual, and now grab the donut visual. So click anywhere on the white space, and then I click on the donut visual. We'll resize that and bring it a bit closer. Now here we're going to bring two items, two calculations. So the solid darker portion of the ring, which will also be represented as the middle of the chart, will be the score. So we're going to bring that into the value section. And so this is a complete ring, so always whole. And now I need the inverse of that score. So the inverse will go below that. And so now I'm able to break the circle into two different pieces. Next, we're going to also highly customize this. So we can go over here to the paint roller, and we can turn off the details because we don't need those. We can also turn off the title. We'll make our own. We can turn off the tooltips and the visual headers. Now, you'll notice here it blends the color really well because the bar and the circle have the exact same color. So now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the background of the donut chart, turn that back on, and we will change the transparency, leave it white because we're going to kind of wash out the other one. And maybe we want something a little bit less transparent. Let's go with 40%. Nah, let's go the other way. I don't like that one. Let's go with 65%. Okay, that looks good. Now the reason we're doing this is that way the color that's in the background is actually a derivative of the color of the ring. So if we adjust the color themes, it'll automatically adjust the circle with us. Now we're going to try and resize the circle here. So I'm going to try and put that right there in the middle. Looks like that's about lined up. Now I'm going to go back, and the square area is a bit too large still, so we're going to need to adjust that. Turn on the selection panel, and then we'll click on the square here in the selection pane, and we probably should name this so it's a little bit more recognizable when we move it later on. So let's change this, and we'll say this is the fill of the circle, so we're going to rename that. And while we're at it, we'll rename the donut as well here. So this is the donut part, like that. All right, let's select the fill again, and now we can hold the shift button, And when we do this, it now drags it and makes it a perfect square. See how it's adjusting that? I can move my mouse all over the place, but it's adjusting it in a perfect ratio there. So we're going to try and just barely get that covered. Now what we want to do is we want to bump this down. So I'm going to select the visual again, and then using my arrow keys, I can adjust the position of this 1 pixel at a time. So I'm going to adjust it so the top left corner is just barely touching the ring of that circle. That looks pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to again adjust the size of it, so we want it just to fit just inside the corner of all those circle pieces. And there. So now we have a filled circle. Alright, now we know that the ring on the darker side here is just over 50%, but the fill is not showing about 50%. That's because the scale is wrong on the fill. So if we go back to the fill area, again, we're talking about data here are percentages. So since everything is going to go from 0 to 1, we can adjust the y-axis on this. So let's go to the y-axis, we'll turn it on, and we'll adjust it to start at 1 and we'll go, or start at 0 and we'll go to 1. And I can turn it back off. And now we have a half fill. So this kind of now correlates more to what the rings are actually doing. Next, we'll need to add the labels for the inside and outside. So clicking the card, we'll bring up the card area. And here we will add our product score. This will be the value of the internal portion. We'll want to change the data labels on this one. So we're going to adjust the data label. And we actually want to adjust the color so it matches the outer ring. Now it's subtle here, but we're picking the very second color in the color theme here, this dark blue one. Now let's make it highlighted a bit better by making it a bit bigger. So let's go with 35. Let's maybe go with 37. That looks about good. Now we can minimize the data label, turn off word wrapping, and get rid of the visual header, and we don't need the category either. So now this is just going to act like a number that's in the middle of the card. So we'll grab this thing and we'll try to put that so it looks like it's as most in the middle as possible here. There we go. Okay, so that matches. Now, whoops, it's gone back to the background. So we can adjust this by going to the card and making sure the layers are correct. So our layers should go from the fill on the very bottom, then the donut, then the card, because now the card needs to sit on top of all those elements. So we're looking good there now. We'll copy that one, Control C, Control V. We'll get one more card, and now this card we want to put on the side because this is going to represent the lighter blue color. We'll click on the paint roller again, adjust the data label, and this time we'll pick the third color over. And this one's a bit too large now, so let's go with 28. That's a little bit better. Let's again adjust the size of this and rearrange the color here. Perfect. So if I click on the different data elements, we can now clearly see it's adjusting, but my numbers are not right. So let's grab this color here and let's adjust this to the inverse calculation. There we go. Now this looks correct. The numbers now adjust automatically. Now the last thing we need is we need a label for this chart. So we'll put a text box on here, go to the home ribbon, clicking text box, and we'll say filled donut chart. Let's make it larger, center it, and that should be good for a label. We'll bring our label into the middle of the chart, and there we go. The recent release of grouping makes this really simple now. So if we want multiples of these on the page, or we want to adjust this shape and format, we can now grab all the visual elements. Now I recommend using the selection panel to do all the grabbing of elements. So let's get our two cards here together. So on the cards, and then all the way down to the text box. And these are all the elements that I want to group together. Right click on any of the elements, click a group, and that makes a nice consolidated visual. So now we've actually added 5 visuals together, and now we have our filled donut chart. This is one element on the page. So if I need to move this around, I just have to click anywhere on the elements, and then I can move the entire group together. Just like so. And if I want a second one on the page, it's very easy. Just select the group of them, Control C, Control V, and now I have another whole group of donut charts already grouped in a group together. So when I adjust these, I now have the values, and then all I have to do is, if I want to adjust the values or calculations, I can go in here and adjust each one of them by clicking on the elements inside the selection panel. Now let's extend this just a little bit further. I'm going to grab this whole selection here. We're going to take the filled donut chart now, and we're going to add some controls to it. Let's enhance this a little bit further. So let's click on the chart, group 2, Control C, move over to the new page, and Control V here. Let's move this over here to the side. Like this. And we'll put it here on the page. Now you notice here, if I click on certain elements, it makes the chart go really weird, and we don't really want that. So this is not a great interaction. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go in the home ribbon. We're going to add a shape to this. We're going to grab the rectangle. Now, we technically don't want the rectangle to do anything, but we just want this to be a cover. So this is like a protection layer. That way, if I click on something, it doesn't really do anything. So I'm going to adjust this and put this right in the middle of our visual. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the layers here. So I'm going to take the shape and I'm actually going to move it on top of our new group. So now this is on top of our visual. The next thing we'll do is we're going to turn off the fill, turn off the visual header, and the line we don't need either. So let's turn the transparency to 100%. So again, this is purely a shape that has no color to it at all. So now I can't really click on any of the elements in the chart, in the donut chart, that makes things act weird. And I can click on these buttons still, and everything still interacts the way I expect it to. Now the last piece here is I want to put some buttons on top of this. Now I have two buttons here that are already being controlled. I have one button here that will toggle between showing a table or a bar chart. So this left button shows a bar chart. If I click that button, you can see a bar chart presents itself. The other button is where I would want to just show a table. So I'm actually going to hide the bar chart, and then I'll show the table. Clicking this button will do this. I'll show you how these are configured. Clicking on the button, you can see this is an outer button, and then with that I have a bookmark, and that means the table is on. So when I click on this button, there's an action that's triggered, and when I do this button click, it'll turn the bar on. So clicking the button turns on the bar chart, and so that just switches between my two different bookmarks. Now I set these bookmarks up earlier. Those have been covered in many other tutorials across the web, so you can learn more about bookmarks and how those are used to toggle visuals on and off. By clicking on these different visuals, it gives me the interaction that I want. Now they're shaded for now just so you can see them as a visual representation. Now I will move my buttons above all of my other shapes because I want these to be on top of everything. And now I'll highlight them right over top of each of the numbers that I want to let people select, like this. So now I'm creating clickable elements on my charts. Holding Control now, you can see I can then again click and click and switch my two charts. Finally, I don't want the colors there anymore, so now I will go to these guys and I'll turn the background off for each of my buttons. So now that they're no longer seen. So now if you click the number, you can still get interactions across the charts. And then if I click the letters in the middle or the slicer, it'll then adjust my data properties. Alright, that's my tutorial on building a filled donut chart and adding controls to it to toggle things on the page. I hope you like this tutorial. Make sure you like and subscribe for more great videos from PowerBI.Tips.